You're mortal, right now, suffering, checking your phone, wondering if she's thinking about you, replaying that conversation, analyzing her tone, your stomach tight with anxiety, your heart racing when you see her name. You're living in need, in desperation, in the constant ache of requiring something outside yourself to feel whole. That's mortality. That's human weakness. That's the prison most men die in without ever knowing there was a key. But there's another state, a forbidden state, where none of that exists, where her opinion becomes background noise, where you move through life completely untouchable, unshakable, self-contained. The ancient Greeks called it ataraxia. Nietzsche called it the Ubermensch. I call it God mode. And once you access it, you'll realize you've been living your entire life as a slave pretending to be free. Let me show you what God mode actually is, because it's not what you think. It's not confidence. It's not fake it till you make it. It's not positive thinking or morning affirmations or any of that self-help garbage they've been selling you. God mode is a state of complete emotional self-sufficiency, where your internal state is generated entirely from within, where external events, including her behavior, her words, her presence or absence, have zero power over your inner world. You become the sun. Everything else orbits you, but nothing can dim your light. That's not arrogance. That's not narcissism. That's liberation from the tyranny of external validation. And it's the most attractive energy a man can radiate. Because women aren't attracted to need, they're attracted to completeness. Right now, you're operating from what I call mortal consciousness. You wake up and immediately check your phone. Did she text? Did she like your post? Is she online? Your emotional state for the entire day is determined by her responsiveness. If she's warm, you feel good. If she's cold, you feel like shit. If she's distant, you spiral into anxiety. You've given her the remote control to your nervous system. She presses a button, you react. That's not love. That's not connection. That's slavery. You're emotionally enslaved to her behavior. And the sick part? You think this is normal. You think this is what caring about someone looks like. But it's not. It's what needing someone looks like. And need is the opposite of power. Here's what God mode looks like in practice. You wake up. Your emotional state is already set. Strong, grounded, centered. Not because she texted, not because anything external happened, but because you generated that state internally. You're the source. Then you check your phone. Maybe she texted, maybe she didn't. And here's the critical part. It doesn't matter. Not because you don't care about her, but because your emotional foundation isn't dependent on her actions. You're pleased if she reached out, indifferent if she didn't. Both responses come from the same grounded place. That's divine indifference. Not cold, not uncaring, but completely unshakable. You're the mountain. She's the weather. Weather changes. Mountains don't. Nietzsche wrote about this in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He talked about the Ubermensch, the Superman, the higher man who transcends human weakness. And the core of that transcendence? Self-overcoming. The ability to master your own needs, your own desires, your own emotional reactions. Most men are controlled by their emotions. God mode men control their emotions. Most men are slaves to their circumstances. God mode men create their circumstances. Most men need validation to feel worthy. God mode men generate worth from within. That's the difference. That's the chasm between mortality and divinity, and you can cross it. But it requires something most men will never do: complete ego death and rebirth. Let me tell you about the moment I accessed God mode. I was exactly where you are now, anxious, needy, constantly checking my phone, my happiness completely dependent on female attention. And then something happened. She left. No explanation, no closure, just gone. And I did what most men do. I spiraled. I begged. I tried to get her back. I made myself pathetic. And then, at rock bottom, something shifted. I realized I had been giving my power away my entire life. To her, to every woman before her, to anyone whose approval I sought. And in that moment of total despair, I made a decision: never again. I would rather die alone with my dignity intact than live with someone while begging for scraps of validation. That decision? That was the death of my mortal self and the birth of something else. The next 6 months I disappeared. Not from the world, from the game. I stopped dating, stopped chasing, stopped seeking. I focused entirely on building myself, my business, my body, my mind, my mission. And something strange happened. The need disappeared. Not because I was distracting myself, but because I had genuinely transcended it. I no longer needed female validation because I had built such a strong internal foundation that external validation became irrelevant. I had accessed God mode, and when I re-entered the dating world, everything had changed. Not because I learned new techniques, but because I had become a different man. A man who didn't need anything. And that energy, it's magnetic. Because it's rare. Because it's real. Here's what most men don't understand about attraction. Women aren't attracted to what you do. They're attracted to what you are. And what you are is determined by your internal state. If you're in mortal consciousness, operating from need, from desperation, from emotional dependence, she feels it. Not consciously, but her biology reads it. And her biological response? Repulsion. Not because she's evil, but because nature designed women to be attracted to strength, to stability, to self-sufficiency, to men who can handle their own emotional state without requiring external support. That's God mode. That's the energy that creates genuine desire, not performance, not techniques, pure being. Let me break down the actual mechanics of God mode, because it's not mystical, it's practical. There are 3 pillars: self-generated emotion, mission obsession, outcome independence. Master these 3, you access the state. Let's start with self-generated emotion. This means your emotional state comes from within, not from external circumstances. How do you build this? Through discipline. You create daily practices that generate positive emotion, regardless of what's happening externally. For me, it's training, meditation, and creative work. Every morning I do these things, and by the time I'm done, I'm in a peak state. Not because something good happened, but because I generated it myself. That's the first pillar. You become the source of your own emotional experience. Second pillar, mission obsession. You need something you care about more than female attention. Something that consumes you. Something that makes you forget to check your phone because you're so locked in. For some men, it's building a business. For others, it's art or athletics or a cause. Doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it's bigger than any relationship. Because when you have a mission that's more important than her opinion, you automatically enter God mode. You can't be shaken by her behavior because you're too busy building something that actually matters. This isn't about ignoring women. It's about having something so important that women become a pleasant addition to your life, not the center of it. Third pillar, outcome independence. This is the hardest one. This means you genuinely don't attach your emotional state to outcomes. She texts back? Great. She doesn't? Also great. She's interested? Cool. She's not? No problem. You'd prefer certain outcomes, but you're not attached to them. Your happiness, your worth, your emotional stability doesn't depend on getting what you want. It depends on who you are, regardless of what you get. That's divine indifference. That's the state where you become truly free, because nothing can hurt you. Nothing can shake you. You're operating from such a deep internal foundation that external circumstances become irrelevant. Now here's where this gets really powerful. When you enter God mode, when you embody these 3 pillars, something happens in your relationships. the dynamic flips completely. Suddenly, she's the one checking her phone. She's the one wondering what you're thinking. She's the one anxious about where she stands. Not because you're playing games, but because you've genuinely transcended need. And that creates a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. When you stop needing her validation, she starts needing yours. Not consciously, but her biology drives her to seek validation from someone who doesn't need hers. That's the paradox. The less you need it, the more you get it. The more you need it, the less you get it. Let me give you a real example of God mode in action. You're on a date. Old you would be anxious, trying to impress her, monitoring her reactions, adjusting your behavior based on her responses, hoping she likes you. That's mortal consciousness. God mode you're completely present, enjoying the conversation, sharing authentically. But there's zero attachment to whether she's impressed. You're not performing. You're not trying to win her over. You're simply being. And if she's feeling it, great. If not, you'll finish your drink, wish her well, and move on with your night, completely unaffected. That energy, that calm, grounded, unshakable presence, it's more attractive than any technique or tactic ever could be, because it's real. Or here's another one. She texts you some bullshit test. I'm going out with my ex tonight. Old you panics, feels jealous, responds emotionally, tries to control the situation. That's mortality. That's human weakness showing. God mode you read it. You feel nothing. Because her behavior doesn't define your emotional state. You might respond with, have fun, and go back to whatever you were doing. Or you might not respond at all because you're genuinely busy with something more important. Either way, there's zero emotional reactivity. You're the mountain, she's the weather, and mountains don't panic when it rains. That response, that genuine indifference, it flips her world upside down because she just realized she doesn't have power over you. And that makes her need your validation even more. Machiavelli understood this principle 500 years ago. In The Prince, he wrote about the importance of appearing unshakable. But here's what most people miss. He wasn't talking about appearing unshakable. He was talking about being unshakable. Because if you're just acting, she'll sense it. Women have incredible bullshit detectors. They can feel when you're performing versus when you're genuinely in that state. God mode isn't a performance. It's a transformation. You don't fake indifference. You cultivate genuine emotional self-sufficiency until external validation becomes truly irrelevant. That's the difference between manipulation and mastery. Now let's talk about the dark side. Because accessing God mode requires something most men aren't willing to do. You have to kill your mortal self. The part of you that seeks comfort, that needs reassurance, that craves validation. That part has to die. And that death is painful. It means sitting with anxiety without reaching for your phone. It means feeling lonely without immediately trying to fill the void. It means being uncomfortable and not seeking external relief. Most men can't do this. They'd rather stay in comfortable slavery than experience the temporary pain of liberation. But if you're willing to go through that fire, what emerges on the other side isn't the same person. It's someone fundamentally different. Someone operating from a completely different paradigm. Here's your pathway to God mode. And I want you to really hear this, because this is the practical framework that will actually get you there. Step 1. 30 days of complete relationship detox. No dating, no chasing, no seeking female attention. Period. This isn't about playing hard to get. This is about genuinely disconnecting from that dopamine source so you can rebuild your internal foundation. During these 30 days, you focus only on the 3 pillars: self-generated emotion through daily discipline, mission obsession through your work or creative pursuit, outcome independence through meditation and mental training. 30 days. That's the minimum time required to start rewiring your nervous system. Step 2. During this detox, you implement what I call the Indifference protocol. Every time you feel the urge to check if she texted, you notice the urge and let it pass without acting on it. Every time you want to reach out for validation, you sit with the discomfort until it dissolves. Every time you feel anxious about what someone thinks, you redirect that energy into your mission. This is behavioral conditioning. You're training your nervous system to find stability internally instead of externally. It's uncomfortable as hell at first, but after a few weeks, something shifts. The need starts to fade. Not because you're suppressing it, but because you're genuinely transcending it. Step 3. You build your God mode identity. This means defining who you are, independent of any relationship. What are your values? What's your mission? What do you stand for? What would you do with your life, even if you never had another relationship? These aren't abstract questions. These are the foundations of your divine self. Most men have never asked themselves these questions because they've been too busy seeking validation to build an actual identity. But God mode requires a strong sense of self, not ego, but genuine self-knowledge. You need to know who you are when no one's watching, because that's who you actually are. Step 4. You test the transformation. After 30 days of detox and internal work, you re-enter the dating world. But here's the key. You're not going back to get something. You're going back to give something, to share your energy, to see if someone's a good fit for your life. The frame is completely different. You're not auditioning for her approval. She's auditioning for access to your world. And that frame shift, it changes everything. Because you're no longer coming from need. You're coming from abundance, from completeness, from God mode. And that energy, it's unmistakable. Now let me tell you what happens when you actually achieve this state. First, weak connections fall away. Women who were with you because you were easy to control, because you were needy, because you were manageable, they disappear. And good, they were draining you anyway. Second, you attract different women. Women who are turned on by strength, by independence, by masculine frame. Women who don't want a man they can dominate. Third, and most importantly, you stop giving a fuck. Not in an angry, bitter way, but in a genuinely liberated way. You realize that your happiness, your worth, your emotional state was never dependent on external validation. It was always available internally. You just didn't know how to access it. Until now. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men will never access God mode because it requires too much discipline, too much discomfort, too much ego death. They'd rather stay comfortable in their suffering than experience the pain of transformation. They'll keep checking their phones, keep seeking validation, keep living in mortal consciousness until they die. And that's their choice. But you have another option. You can choose to go through the fire, to kill your mortal self and birth your divine self, to access the state where nothing external can shake you, where you become the source of your own power, your own validation, your own emotional experience. Nietzsche said, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." That chaos, that's what you're feeling right now. That anxiety, that need, that desperation. But within that chaos is the potential for something magnificent. Your divine self, your God mode.
And the birth of that self requires the death of your mortal consciousness. Are you willing to die so you can truly live? Are you willing to go through the pain of transformation so you can access the power of indifference? Are you willing to become the mountain so the weather stops affecting you? Here's what I know. The men who access God mode never go back. Because once you taste that freedom, once you experience that power, once you live in that state of divine indifference, mortality becomes unbearable. You can't unsee it. You can't unknow it. You can't go back to needing external validation. Once you've built an internal foundation so strong that external validation becomes irrelevant. That's the point of no return. That's the transformation. That's God mode. And it's available to you. Right now. Today. This moment. But you have to choose it. You have to commit to the death of your mortal self. You have to be willing to suffer through the transformation. Because on the other side of that suffering, divinity. So here's your choice. You can close this video and go back to checking your phone. Go back to seeking her validation. Go back to living in mortal consciousness. And there's no judgment in that. Most men make that choice. Or you can make a different choice. You can decide, right now, that you're done being mortal. That you're ready to transcend need. That you're willing to go through the fire of transformation to access the state of divine indifference. That you're ready to unleash God mode. The choice is yours. But understand this. If you choose mortality, you choose suffering. If you choose divinity, you choose freedom. One path leads to a life of anxiety, neediness, and emotional slavery. The other leads to power, peace, and liberation. Which will it be? Mortal or God? Slave or sovereign? Needy or complete? Choose now, because time doesn't wait for mortals. But gods have all the time in the world.